There is a ghoul lurking in the shadows of your fancy, jazzy, housey chords, and it's secretly eating away at your vibe. This ghoul is the minor ninth, another way of saying 13 semitones. Today, we banish this ghoul. In order to identify this ghoul, the minor ninth, we're going to need one of those EMF ghost hunter devices. Our musical version of that is called the interval. An interval is just a way to measure the distance between two notes. It's a system that's a bit convoluted, mainly because it's been slowly developed over the past 2,000 years. But along the way, we will relate everything back to semitones, which is what will be most useful to us in a DAW like Ableton. We will be in the key of A minor. Turn on scale, set the root note to A, and switch the key to minor. Here we have two of the same note. The distance between these notes is 0. We call this unison. One semitone is referred to as a minor second. 2 semitones is a major second. 3 semitones is a minor third. 4 semitones is a major third. You might be seeing a pattern here. These intervals come in twin packs. The second has a minor variety and a major variety. Same with the third, a minor third and a major third. The minor is the smaller of the two intervals in terms of semitones. The major is 1 semitone larger. But hang on, just when you thought you've got the hang of it, there's a curveball. 5 semitones is a perfect fourth. 6 semitones is called a tritone. And 7 semitones is called a perfect fifth. Here we have 3 intervals that don't come in that twin pack variety of minor and major variations. 5 semitones is a perfect fourth, 6 semitones is a tritone, and 7 semitones is a perfect fifth. These are kind of in their own special category here. Let me know in the comments if you know why these are different and why they're called perfect intervals. 8 semitones is referred to as a minor sixth. We're back to our twin pack variety of major and minor intervals. 9 semitones is, you guessed it, a major sixth. 10 semitones is a minor seventh. And 11 semitones is a major seventh. Lastly, we get to 12 semitones, which is an octave. Now we get to that ghoul I referred to, with a fitting 13 semitones. This is referred to as a minor ninth, and it's 1 semitone larger than an octave. Give it a listen. At first, it might not seem so bad, but when you repeatedly hear it, you start to realize how dissonant it is. Its dissonance will kind of sneak up on you, and you have to be careful to know when it's there. To show you what's going on with this annoying interval in context, we'll start with a simple chord progression. We're going to start with the 1 chord, which in A minor is an A minor chord. A, C, E. Next, we'll go to the 4 chord, which in the key of A minor is D minor. D, F, A. So far, so good. But we don't want to work with just simple triads, which is what we have so far. We want each of these chords to be minor ninth chords, A minor 9 and D minor 9. But this is where the past 2,000 years of music theory evolution gets a little confusing, because when we say minor ninth, we're not actually referring to the minor ninth, 13 semitones, which is the subject of this video. Instead, we're referring to the process of leapfrogging from 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 to create extended chords. If you want a more detailed breakdown of this idea, check out this video. Let's make this chord progression a little more interesting by shifting the 4 chord over by 1/8 note. Now it'll have a little more groove. Let's add a melody. Right now, the chords are underneath the melody. Let's move the melody down 1 octave so that the chords in the melody occupy the same region. Now we'll extend the first 2 notes so that it functions as a melody while also providing the sustained harmony. Now here is where that Skool, that 13 semitone interval, the minor 9th, starts lurking. Let's deactivate every note except for the top note of the 4 chord, which is the 9th, E, and the melody note, F, which is the 3rd of that D minor chord. Even though both of these notes, E and F, are both perfectly fine in the chord and the key, 100% correct, the fact that they're positioned this way, 13 semitones apart, the minor 9th interval, makes it so that they grind against one another in a somewhat unpleasing way. Now let's hear these notes at the same time. Are you starting to hear the ghoulish nature of this interval? If not, that's okay. I think you will by the end of the video. Do they sound like they're in harmony? Maybe you wouldn't notice it at first, but after 2-3 minutes, it might start to become a tad unpleasant. The average listener may not register this in any conscious way. They probably won't. But after 2 minutes, they might start thinking to themselves, I'm gonna hit next. You might be thinking, I don't see the problem here. This doesn't sound bad. And you're right. The minor 9th, or 13 semitones, is not wrong. Everything's in the key of A minor, and the F note is even the 3rd of the D minor chord that's happening at that moment. Everything is fine. This is not a matter of right or wrong, good or bad, and it won't necessarily make or break your music. But think of it this way. There is music that sounds nice, sounds great even. Think of this as a log cabin. It protects you from the rain, it provides shelter, it gets the job done. On the other hand, there's music that really captures the listener, whether it immediately stops them in their tracks or captures them in a sly way where the listener finds themselves thinking of that song later that day or a week later. This is music that's built like the pyramids, where the structure is so solid and striking that it's hard to define. Both the cabin and the pyramids could provide shelter and protect you from the elements, but they elicit very different responses. One is not better or worse than the other. A cabin in Alaska is just as beautiful as the pyramids in Egypt. It's just a different kind of beauty. Everybody has their own subjective preferences, just as every listener does. To me, the real difference is in all the small details. Small details like the minor 9th, or 13 semitones, that pile up one by one like snow. Before you know it, the listener is snowed in with your song or musical composition. The minor 9th, or 13 semitones, is an important detail, and treating it with attention and purpose can go a long way to keeping the peace in your harmony and chords. It also makes it so that when you want your music to be crunchy and discordant, you can add that flavor intentionally. Let's point out one more thing. Right now, the chords move in chunks. The 1 chord's here, and the 4 chord moves down here. Let's say we want them to be smoother, so that as they transition, they occupy the same area. We can accomplish this by using inversions. Let me know in the comments if you know what an inversion is. I plan to do a video all about inversions in the future. For right now, we'll define an inversion as different arrangements of the notes of a chord. So we'll take the bottom 2 notes of the 4 chord and move them up an octave. Now when we move from the 1 chord to the 4 chord, they occupy the same region and it creates a smoother sound. But this doesn't fix our problem with the 13 semitone minor ninth interval. Take a look. Even when the notes of the chords are rearranged or inverted, that E note is in the same place and the F note is in the same place. Still 13 semitones apart. Still presenting this issue for us. I'm aware that for some of you watching this video, it might be the first time that you're listening this closely or deeply to some of these details. I'm going to play it a few different ways to help you zoom in with your ear and identify this sound. You can think of this as using your ears as a microscope. It's commonly referred to as ear training. And just like with everything in music, you get better at it with practice. Now I'll show you 3 different ways that you can handle this minor ninth 13 semitone interval. The first way to remedy this potentially undesirable interval of 13 semitones is to change the melody note to a different note. If we move the melody note F to G, now the distance between that E note and G is 15 semitones, and we've gotten rid of this ghoulish 13 semitone grind. This solution becomes even clearer when we move that G note down an octave, and now you can see that that E note and G note form a minor third. These 2 notes play well together. There's no crunchiness at all. Just so we can refresh our ears, let's compare the 2. Here it is with G, and here it is with F. This is a good solution. The F note in the melody that created the 13 semitone interval is gone when we change it from F to G, but the shape of the melody remains the same. F to G does not radically change the melody. But what if we want to keep that F note, meaning we'll still have that 13 semitone interval? We can subdue the dissonance of that interval by incorporating it melodically. Just like we did previously, we'll jump up to G and then go down to E. But now, we'll pass through F to connect those 2 notes. This is what's called a passing tone. Now, even though we still have F, the problematic 13 semitone interval, we're not using it as a structural element of the melody. We're using it as connective material, which very much subdues the impact of that dissonance. Our ears are weirdly good at differentiating between the main structural notes and the secondary connective notes. This makes it so that you could switch the order of this little melodic fragment. Instead of going from G, passing through F to E, you could switch the G and the F, starting on F, going up to G, and then leaping down to E. Both variations succeed at chilling out that crunchy dissonant interval of the minor ninth or 13 semitones that we get on the F note. It does this by sandwiching that F note into the midst of a melodic fragment. So our ears no longer focus on that dissonant interval, but instead just hear it as part of a melodic phrase. Also, it doesn't have to be a matter of either or. We could use both variations. If we double the loop, the first time we could use the first variation, starting on G, passing through F, arriving at E, and the second time we could use the second variation, starting on F, going up to G, and then leaping down to E. This creates a nice question and answer, or call and response. We can take this melodic idea one step further by adding more rhythmic activity. Right now the notes G and F are eighth notes. If we cut those in half, they become 16th notes, which now gives us a gap in between each note to expand the melody. To keep it simple, I'll just go to the next available note in the scale above the note we start at. So G will go up to A, then F will go up to G. This is a fine option, but you could insert any note here. Play around with it, see what you can come up with. To me, this is where the terms melody line or top line or bass line really come into focus. The word line really literally means line. You can think of this as line drawing in a visual art kind of sense. When you feed the ear a musical idea, it tends to crave more of it. Now that we've introduced this melodic idea, we can use it in other parts of the phrase or loop. Here's 3 different variations. Each one gets a little more simplified. Taking a melodic fragment and using it over the course of a composition, song, or loop is called a sequence. Many musicians have used this over the years, perhaps most notably Johann Sebastian Bach. This brings us to the third and final way that we can solve this dissonant 13th semitone minor ninth interval. So far, every solution has involved changing the melody note or altering the melody in some way or another. This solution involves the opposite. We're going to keep that melody note the same, but we're going to change the chord underneath. First, we're going to need to shorten the D minor chord so that we have room to put a different chord where the F note occurs. To quickly refresh, our gripe is with the fact that there is 13 semitones between the E in the D minor 9 chord and the F in the melody above. We need to find a chord where this is not the case. There are so many options here. This is where a lot of the fun of harmony comes from. Depending on the chord choices, you can completely recontextualize the melody. This is what's typically referred to as reharmonization. I'm going to show you an option that is pretty zesty, but easy to comprehend. If we take that D minor 9 chord and we just move it up 1 semitone, it becomes E flat minor 9. But look what happens to that minor ninth interval. Where we once had E and F 13 semitones apart, now when we move that chord that contained E up 1 semitone, it now becomes F. Now we have F down here in the chord and F in the melody. Now they're just a nice clean octave apart. Problem solved. Here's how it sounds. When the melody goes back down to E from F, we can just move that E flat minor 9 chord back down to D minor 9 where it began. Now we've introduced this little speed bump action in the chord progression. D minor 9, up to E flat minor 9 briefly, back down to D minor 9. You might be confused by the fact that E flat minor 9 has no relation to the key that we're in, A minor. That's understandable. If we start taking random chords from unrelated keys and combining them for no real reason in the hopes that it sounds sophisticated, It's going to sound chaotic and disorganized. But our ears have a surprising capacity to accept unusual chord progressions as long as they are in support and in accordance with the melody. And that's what we have going on right here. We're only going up to E flat minor 9 to make that melody note feel more cozy. That's why this pretty zesty chord progression going from D minor 9 to E flat minor 9 back down to D minor 9 doesn't sound that crazy. I should also note that anytime you start on a chord, go up a half step, and then return to the chord, it's usually a safe move. The same can be done in the opposite direction, starting on a chord, going down a half step, and then returning back to the original chord. This E flat minor 9 chord is just one of many chords that will make that F melody note feel less dissonant. Let me know in the comments if you can think of a different chord that would accomplish the same goal. To make the speed bump quality of this motion from D minor 9 up to E flat minor 9 then back to D minor 9 a little less apparent, we'll change the inversion of E flat minor 9 and the last D minor 9 chord. You can do this easily by moving the top two notes of both of those chords down an octave. The last thing to do here is to put all these solutions together. There's nothing that says you just have to use one of them. We'll use all three of them. We'll loop this 4 times. The first time, we'll use solution 1, where instead of going to F, we'll change the note to G. The second time, we'll use solution 3, where we change the chord to E flat minor 9 and then back to D minor 9. For the third time, we'll use solution 2, where we include F as part of a melodic fragment. And for the fourth time, we'll go back to solution 3, where we use our E flat minor 9 chord back to D minor 9. On beat 4 of the last bar, I've thrown in an extra chord. It's a bit zesty. It's a teaser for a future video. Let me know in the comments section if you know what chord this is. I hope you found this video useful. If you'd like to download the project file from this video, as well as all the other videos on this channel, you can do so on my Patreon, where you'll also get access to the weekly beat battle, samples, presets, and monthly Zoom hang. If you're interested in lessons, I offer one-on-one sessions over Zoom. Email me at jarenlessons@gmail.com for more info. Get in on the Discord to join a growing community of music people, and listen to my weekly releases on streaming platforms and Bandcamp. All the links and info are in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.